kind of pick up. First, just want to welcome everyone to the course. My name is Larry Muslino. I've been teaching math for probably almost 20 years now. A mix of face-to-face and online courses. I really like online courses for the convenience that it offers students, but as I was just mentioning, it does make it more challenging for the scenario where a student needs help. And that's where I think some of the videos in our course will be very useful, and the tutoring that's available will be very helpful. Why don't I just start off here with a quick overview of the course. So here's the syllabus. I'll bring this up in a second. Here is the course announcements. I'll show you those. Each week, at the beginning of the week, I'm going to be posting kind of an outline of what you need to do each week, what the grading is, just so you can keep on top of the due dates and not miss out. Let me show you that real quick for week one. Here's a posting that says, welcome to week one. And I just wanted to show you that it says our course runs from January 11th to January 16th. And I'm sorry, the week one runs from January 11th to January 16th. And then I list out all the activities that you're going to work through. You can almost think of this as like a checklist to try to follow. So this says read chapter 1 and chapter 2. There's some PDF files that you can look at. Very important, these videos. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Then there's a discussion forum. So you're going to post an initial response. Notice here it says the initial response is due by Wednesday at noon. Then there's going to be 2 follow-ups to other students. The first follow-up is due by Friday at noon, and then the second follow-up to another student is due by Saturday, Saturday night. So keep an eye on these due dates because you don't want to miss out on points because you posted late. Then there's going to be practice problems. These are going to be important because they're going to help you be successful in a quiz. So these practice problems are not graded, but they basically show you worked out step-by-step examples in a video format. So these I think are going to be a great resource for you. Then here's the main graded item. It's a quiz. And this is set up as 20 multiple choice questions. These questions are going to be very similar to the practice problems. They're also going to be very similar to the worked out examples that are shown in the textbook. So I'll show you where this quiz is located. It's worth 40 points. It's due by Saturday night. But here's the good news. You get 3 separate attempts, and your highest grade is kept out of the 3 attempts. Now, each one of these attempts is 2 hours, but I think you're going to find that 2 hours is enough time. I don't think you'll be, under time pressure here. I think you'll have enough time. The key, I think, is to make use of these 3 separate attempts, because usually what happens is a student will improve their scores when they go to take the quiz the second time and then the third time, because they basically seen the types of problems now, and they could go back and kind of review more before taking the second attempt and even review more before taking the third attempt. The only thing you got to keep in mind is you have to give yourself enough time for these 3 attempts. If you try the first attempt Saturday night at 9 o'clock, that's not a good idea. You're going to run out of time and you won't give yourself enough time for the other attempts. And remember, you also want to give yourself enough time to get tutoring help or to go back and watch the videos. So a good plan might be, let's see, I think I can write on the screen here. Hold on one second. I want to just get my tablet so that I can write on the screen if I can get this set up. All right. So, a good idea might be, for example, maybe on Friday. I'm sorry, I should say Thursday, you do attempt 1 at the quiz. Of course, if you're happy with your score, you're done. You don't need attempt 2, but maybe you want to go back and improve your score. So maybe on Friday, you would schedule attempt 2. And of course, leave Saturday as a backup plan for attempt number 3, right? So, spreading the work out, keeping track of your your time is a good idea for an online course like this. That's, generally, of course, for any online course or any course, I guess, any course at all, you want to be very cognizant of your time allotment to the course activities. All right, so anyway, I just wanted to show you this summary. I'll post this kind of a course announcement at the beginning of every week. So again, you can use this as a checklist of items that are due and keep track of the due date. So the other thing I wanted to mention to you is kind of the overall setup of the course. So here are the 8 weeks listed. And you'll notice that weeks 1 to 3 and weeks 5 to 7 are similar in that there's generally 2 topics or 2 chapters covered in the textbook. There's a discussion forum, and there's that multiple choice quiz with 3 attempts. But then week 4 is different because there's a midterm exam, and week 8 is different because there's a final project and a final exam. Okay, of course, I'll give you more details on the midterm exam and the final exam as we get closer, but this is the general outline of how our course is set up. All right, so let me go back. And just mention, first of all, tutor.com. So this tutoring, you could click on this link, is going to be very, very useful. These tutors are excellent because what these tutors do is they don't just give you an answer. They don't just show you how to come up with the answer. They guide you through the process of coming up with an answer. So they kind of walk you step by step, but they actively involve you. And that's important because if a tutor just shows you how to do the problem, when you go to do it yourself later on, you might not really have retained what the tutor was communicating to you by. So having the tutors actively involve you in the problem solving method, it's actually much better for your retention and then your success. Okay. So I just wanted to show that to you. Let me just show you the syllabus. So again, this is going to show you week 1, week 2. Again, a checklist of what to work through. And then here is the grading setup. So you can see the weekly discussions are 20 points each. So that's about 16% of your grade. Please don't miss out on these points. Sometimes students skip over the discussions. Well, you don't want to lose out on those points. So keep on top of the discussions. Then here's the quizzes. That's a significant part of your grade. Almost 25% of your grade is quizzes. Remember to make use of the 3 attempts because usually a student will improve their scores. There's a project in the last week that's 10%. The midterm is 20%, and then the final exam is 30%. So you can see the midterm and final exam together are 50% of your grade. So you definitely want to prepare for those, and I'll give you more guidance on that as we get closer. Okay, I'll let you read through the rest of the syllabus, but please do check out the syllabus. All right, let me come down to week 1, because the way the course is set up is there's this kind of like really step-by-step progression. So you read through the overview, the learning objectives, then here is the required readings. It's going to be chapter 1, chapter 2. And then here are the PDF files that I mentioned. So if I click on one of these, you'll see what this is going to do is give you an overview of chapter 1. So you can think of this as like a condensed version of chapter 1. But don't just read this PDF file without reading the textbook, because the textbook is going to have a lot of good worked out examples. I'll show you that in a minute. But you'll notice that there are examples for different methods that are used in voting. So that's really what week 1 is about. What are different methods to accomplish voting methods. And you can see there's fairness criteria, there's plurality, there's pairwise comparisons, there's board account. So the challenge in this first week is really keeping track of all these different types of voting methods, because each one of them has their own procedure. And by the way, you could come up with different results based on these different methods. So imagine you had a group of people voting. If you used pairwise comparisons, you might come up with a different result versus this board account method. So these methods don't always give you the same result because the methods themselves are different. So it is possible to get different outcomes in terms of, who would be the winner in a voting setup using these different methods. And then the second part of this first week is weighted voting system. So you'll see as you get into this, these voting methods use some different weightings. So there's this method called Banzhaf power, Shapley-Shubik power, and so on. So you really have to, read through the textbook. And what I would suggest is make up your own summary sheet. And maybe you devote one page to each one of these methods. And you write down in your own words how the method works. And then maybe you also include a worked out example on your summary sheet and use an example that makes sense to you, right? Don't just copy an example from the textbook if you don't understand it. This way, if you have a summary sheet for each one of these methods, when you go to take the quiz, and the quiz gives you a question on pairwise comparisons, let's say, you can just go to your reference sheet and remind yourself of that specific method step by step, and that should let you be successful. So here are all these videos to check out. So please do check these out because these have a lot of good worked out examples. Let me come here to this pairwise comparisons just as an example. You'll notice this is only 5 minutes. So these videos don't take a long time, but you'll notice that they have, if I scroll ahead a little bit here, you'll see this is a worked out example of pairwise comparison. By the way, this is also called Copeland's method. So that's why this video method mentions both pairwise comparison and Copeland. So I think these videos are very important because instead of just reading it in a textbook, which is sometimes difficult, right? If you're not understanding the method, reading about it in a textbook might not give you the understanding that you want. But having someone explain it step by step is usually a much better way to proceed. So again, these videos are only going to be, 4 or 5 minutes long. Definitely worth checking them out. All right, now here are practice problems. So once you've watched these videos, once you've read through the textbook, once you've made up these summary sheets, now you can go and try these methods yourself, okay? So for example, here's a problem that says, here are some voting results. Who would be the winner for pairwise comparison? So you would try this yourself. Now, let's say you are stuck on board account. You forgot that method. Well, now you could go back and watch the video solutions, right? So this is going to show you the video solutions. Okay, so don't look at these videos until you've tried it yourself, right? Because you want to get some practice under your belt where you try these problems yourself. This is almost like a simulated quiz. And then if you get stuck, go to the video solutions, okay? And then here is the link when you're ready to take the quiz. If I bring this up, notice here it says 3 attempts allowed, highest grade is kept. I'll just show you, I'll just do a quick preview here so you can see it. So you'll notice that there is 20 questions. You can jump around to these 20 questions. There'll be a mix of different types of questions. So notice this one says plurality method, who wins? You would go back to your summary sheet. and look up plurality method, look at the step-by-step procedure, and try these problems. These are multiple choice, so you just select your answer here and go to the next question and so on. Okay. All right. By the way, Ian, please, of course, let me know if there's any questions. And then, of course, it's going to be the same thing for next week, the same kind of outline, and the same kinds of activities. Okay. Let me do this. Let me just show you a quick example from the textbook. So I just took a screenshot from our textbook. And this is a method, this is an example of pairwise comparison. So that's an example, a method that's used quite a bit in this first week. So let me take a second and just kind of walk through us, because I just want to show you how these examples in the textbooks will be helpful. So this is coming from page 20 in the textbook. Whoops, I'm sorry. Let me make sure I'm sharing. Yeah. So this is coming from page 20 in the textbook. And this is giving you the results of an election. And it's asking you to find the winner using the pairwise comparison method of voting. Okay. All right, so how does this method work? And again, I want to make up an outline for myself, because here's what happens. There's multiple methods used in this week one. If you don't have a good reference sheet or a good summary in your own words, it's going to get confusing, because these methods are going to get jumbled around in your head. But if you have it organized and written out, each method has its own description. And again, it has to be in your own words, so that when you look back at it later in the week, it makes sense to you. And I think it's good to have a worked out example as well, so you can show yourself how to implement that procedure. So let's take a look and see how this works. All right, well, first they're giving me the voting results. So here are the voting results. So the way this worked is each person that was voting was given a ballot, and they were asked to rank order candidates A, B, C, D. So for example, let's say John voted this way. He voted C, D, B, A. Harry voted A, B, C, D. And Mary, let's say, voted B, D, C, A. Right? So you can have all these voters. Here's the total number of voters across the top here. So if I was to add these up, let's see, what do these numbers add up to? 24, 25, and 12. I think this is 37. So there were 37 voters in this election. All right, now some of these voters are going to vote the same. Let's say Mary voted BDCA, but maybe someone else, maybe Paul, voted the same. So what I'm going to do is count up how many voters voted BDCA. And according to this table, 4 voters voted this way. It looks like John voted CBDA. Well, John was the only person out of the 37 voters that voted that way. I know that because there's only a 1 here. So only 1 person voted in this order, CBDA. A lot of people voted ABCD. So Harry voted ABCD. But there were also 13 others that voted the same way. So that's why there's 14 voters that voted ABCD. All right, so this is the results. Let me know if that doesn't make sense. This table is a little confusing until you recognize that this number on top is telling you how many people voted for this particular order shown beneath the number. All right, so these are the results. And I'm going to go ahead now and set up the pairwise comparison. Well, what pairwise comparison says is compare a pair of candidates at a time. So I want to compare A versus B. Then I'm going to compare A versus C. Then A versus D. I also want to compare B versus C, B versus D, and C versus D. So I've compared each of the two candidates one pair at a time. These are all possible comparisons of two candidates, right? I've covered all possible comparisons in this list. All right, so now all I do is I say to myself, I want to compare A versus B. So I'm going to count up how many voters put candidate A ahead of candidate B. All right, let me go to this first column. Well, in this first column, A is ahead of B. So that means 14 voters went with A ahead of B. Let me go to the 10 voters next. Well, for the 10 voters, they voted B ahead of A. Notice how B is ranked higher than A. So these 10 are in favor of candidate B. Let me go to the next column. Again, B is on top of A. So these 8 voters really favored candidate B over candidate A. And let me keep going here. Here is candidate B on top of candidate A. So these 4 also favored candidate B. And this last column, candidate B favored candidate A. So again, this one person favored candidate B. So let me count all these up. I know that there were 14 that favored candidate A. That was the first column in red. But all these other columns favored candidate B. So I'm going to add up these other voters. It looks like it's 10 plus 8 plus 4 plus 1. Well, altogether, that's 23 votes. So I'm going to mark that down, 23 votes. Well, in this face-off between candidate A and candidate B is the winner because candidate B had 23 votes versus only 14 votes for candidate A. So in the pairwise comparison between A and B is the winner. All right, let me do the same scenario, but now I want to do a face-off between candidate A and candidate C. So let me do that. I'm going to erase all this stuff right now. So now we're going to only compare candidate A and C. Ignore the other candidates. We're only going to compare A and C. All right, let me go to the first column. I'm noticing that candidate A is leading candidate C, right? More people were in favor of candidate A compared to candidate C. So these 14 people are really in favor of candidate A. All right, let me go to the next column. Again, I'm comparing only candidates A and C right now. It looks like C is higher than A. So these 10 are going with candidate C. These 8 favor candidate C. These 4 favor candidate C. And this 1 here favors candidate C. So again, it looks like it's the same results. These add up to 23. So in the face-off for A versus C, A got 14 votes, but C got 23 votes. So C is the winner. Okay. Let me do one more example, perhaps, where we don't get the exact same results. So let me do one more example. Maybe I'll go down to the bottom Let me go down to the very last comparison. Let me erase this for a second. Do one more example. Let me come down to the bottom. Now we're going to compare C versus D. Okay, let me go to the first column. For the first column, it looks like candidate C is favored over candidate D. So these 14 are going with candidate C. Let me go to the next column. Again, it looks like candidate C is favored over candidate D. So these 10 are in favor of candidate C. Okay, let me go to the next column. Well, the next column, I'm noticing now candidate D is favored over candidate C. So these 8 are going for candidate D. Go to the next column, same thing, candidate D is favored over candidate C. So these 4 are choosing candidate D. And for this last column, you might notice candidate C is on top over candidate D. So this one person here favors candidate C over candidate D. All right, so let me just total up the results. For candidate C, there's 14 plus 10 plus 1. So candidate C is 14 plus 10 plus 1, which is 25 votes. Candidate D, it looks like, is 8 and 4, which is 12 votes. Now, let me declare the winner. Well, candidate C has 25 votes versus candidate D that has 12 votes, so candidate C is the winner. All right, now I'm ready to come to a final decision. In all of these pairwise comparisons, candidate B won twice. So I'm going to mark down that candidate B won 2 out of these pairwise comparisons. How about candidate C? Well, I'm noticing candidate C won 3, 1, 2, 3 of the pairwise comparisons. And then candidate D won 1 of the comparisons. And poor candidate A won none of the pairwise comparisons. So candidate A basically gets no votes. So now all I have to do is declare C the winner because they had the most points, where a point is winning a pairwise comparison. So the winner here is candidate C. Okay, so this is a little confusing when you get started because you're not quite sure how to, interpret this table. How do I set up this table? Well, again, this is described in the textbook, and it's also described in the video on how to set up these pairwise comparisons. And each one of these voting methods has its own procedure like this. And what's nice in the textbook is the textbook uses the same example. So the textbook uses the same results for the math club election to guide you through each of the different methods. So this same table you're going to see is repeated for each one of the different methods. All right. All right, so I just wanted to show you one example of these voting methods, and again, just emphasize to you that each method has its own step-by-step process, and you really have to understand that step-by-step process so that when you go to try these examples yourself, you understand the the steps needed to get started and the steps needed to work through to successfully navigate. I think that's all I wanted to cover in this quick intro. Folks, reminder too, anytime you need help please reach out to me. I'm ready to assist. Or the nice thing about this tutoring, let me go to the tutoring for a second. I'm going to come up here and click on tutor.com. The nice thing about this is 24/7. So, here I'm going to select MA102. So notice there are going to be tutors that are, specially available for MA102. They'll be familiar with the topics. Then you could say that you either want to do a chat only or a chat plus voice. If you have a microphone on your computer, voice is nice because it lets you, just describe the question. So you could say chat with voice. Then here you would enter your specific question. For example, you might say, I am having trouble with pairwise comparison method. And then you would say connect now. And it would take maybe just a minute or so, and you'll be connected with a live person. You can share screens with them. You could show them the problem you're working on, and they could guide you. So this is very nice that it's 24/7. So even if you're working on some of the homework late at night, you have this help immediately available. Sometimes when you're stuck on a problem, you don't want to wait until the next day to get an answer back. You want to get quick assistance. So that's why this tutor.com is very useful. All right. I think that was all I wanted to cover. Again, just a reminder, please, when it comes to the outline, please make use of this table as a kind of a checklist, just to make sure you're not overlooking anything. Again, let me know if there's any questions. All right. Ian, any questions on anything in the course at this early stage? All right. Well, Ian, I'm not sure if you're talking, but you're muted. Just to remind you.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yes.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was talking the whole time. No, I definitely appreciate you taking the time. And as you were explaining the problems, it seemed pretty straightforward. I think the next step now is just working through myself and figuring out the problems. But no, I appreciate it. No questions at this time.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, again, I think each one of these methods are not super complicated. I think the challenge is just keeping track of all the different methods, and just understanding what needs to be done for each method, so that when you go into the quiz and you see a problem on pairwise comparisons, you have a good outline that you can refer back to, because I think it's going to be hard to memorize all of these methods off the top of your head. I'm a big fan of creating like summary sheets. That's the way I would do it myself. This way, when I get a question on bands off power, for example, I have a ready reference that I can look at, that I could glance at to remind me how to work through those kinds of problems. All right, well, if you have no questions, I think I'll close things out. Look forward to working with you in the course, and also for other students. I'll post the link to this recording, and let me know if there's any questions. Thanks for joining, Ian.
I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Talk to you soon. Bye.